Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. As promised, I am here with Alex Reed. Welcome, Alex, to the podcast.
Hi, Cindy. Thank you so much for having me today.
I'm so happy to have you. Just a quick note to everybody listening. We were just saying how fun this is because you are one of our partners. And so we have spoken through email but never met. And so I'm so glad that one, you trust the work of Kirsten enough to kind of want to integrate that into your practice. But also, I'm really excited to finally speak with you and have a conversation.
Oh, me too, Cindy. You are such a needed voice in
Thank you.
all of the parenting noise. So
Oh,
I'm
I
really happy to
appreciate
be
that.
here and sort of dig into it with you.
Thank you. So, this podcast episode comes from a series of questions that I received, and so it's an important one. Um, I've spoken with some parents that are struggling with children who are often moody from the moment they wake up, where parents feel that they are walking on eggshells, is the expression they say. And will the child wake up happy? Will they not be? Will you recommend the wrong shirt for school? Will you offer the wrong bowl of cereal? Did you put too much? Did you put, maybe you didn't put enough? And all of these little things lead to a child getting stuck in a mood where they're angry, they become rude and disrespectful. And all of that is a series of things where parents don't know what to do, even to the point where parents feel like they're extra happy in the morning because maybe if they're extra happy, the child won't turn off in terms of their mood, like things will turn sour, and they're trying to make it until they leave that door. And so let's begin by maybe understanding what's happening with that child. Why is it that some kids, even as young as 6 years old, that I've heard up to like 9 or 10-year-old kids, where they're really moody? Why do we see that in some kids?
Yeah, Cindy, it's a good question, and it's really hard. I sort of want to validate parents'
Yeah,
experience
yeah,
in that, when a child's emotions run really high and everything feels like a landmine,
yeah.
it can take a real toll on the family dynamics
Mhm.
and your own sense of peace. And that eggshell feeling, it's real, and it's a
Mm.
good question. The science is in a fledgling state, but as best we understand mood and temperament, it's rarely just one thing. A child might inherit a sensitive temperament. They may also experience stress at home or at school. They may
Mm.
also have difficulty with emotion regulation.
Right.
And all of those things can compound over time. And so there's a lot of factors that play
Yeah.
into it. But the good news is that early support, right, skill building,
Yeah.
a nurturing environment, all of those things can make a huge difference. So we're never helpless with these questions, but it is hard.
Yeah. And so you've mentioned the word that I think we can start off with, that word temperament, right? So
Yeah.
this is what I've heard. It's hard because you can't discipline or you want to sometimes and you do maybe, but how do you discipline, some child's mood? And so sometimes it's just a mood. And as a parent, that's throwing you off. Like I said, if you're walking on eggshells and you're nervous and you're stressed, then you're going to react in a way that you don't want to. And then maybe that I always talk to parents about, like, am I escalating the situation or am I de-escalating the situation? And so that's the sort of rule of thumb we have inside the Reflective Parent Club. But for parents, it's like, okay, now it's escalated and now my child's being disrespectful. And so now I need to, remove their screen time today because, and we start every single morning that way. So you mentioned the word temperament. How do we navigate a child's temperament, especially if a child's more towards that temperament of a little bit more rough and moody with their and challenges with struggling to regulate their own emotions?
It's a really good question. I think it's important to start with the word temperament and what it
Yeah.
means, because I think that once we understand it a little better, it can help us figure out the right intervention. So, temperament in children and all of us is our innate style of reacting to the world.
Mm,
It's how we experience emotions. It's how we adapt to change. It's how we interact with others. But it's not something that you choose or that you create as a parent, right? It's more like an emotional fingerprint that's just present from infancy and that's shaped by the environment and relationships around you. But it's nothing that you can choose one way or the
right.
other. And every child is unique, and temperament can be grouped into various types. We talk about like the easy, flexible child, and then the
Mm,
difficult sort of temperament, and then the slow to warm child. And those are sort of the three broad temperament categories that we typically use. And people have taken those temperament um, styles that we use in developmental psychology terms and have given them fancy new names, right? Like highly sensitive and deeply
Right.
feeling and all of those
Yes.
things. We can talk about that too. Um, so, again, it's not something that we can choose or that we can determine. So we kind of have to work with what we were given, right?
Mm.
And so different temperament styles might respond differently to different kinds of intervention. Some might be really motivated by things like rewards, and some
Mhm.
might be really put off by any sort of demands that we're placing on them, whether it's a reward that's externally imposed or praise or whatever. They might have a totally different reaction. So it depends what kind of kid we're working with too.
So what you said is also again important because I think some parents feel that whatever advice they see online, if I apply it to my child, that will be fixed, right? So child
Right.
is moody, or child can't regulate anger, and so I'll sit down with my child after a blow up and we'll talk about it. They'll listen, they'll be receptive to it, and then we'll move forward. But some parents who have these children who have different temperaments, you can't even sit after something has happened. Maybe their child is blocking their ears and saying, I don't want to hear it, I don't want to talk about it. And so you can't even show up in the way that you've learned to support them. What
Yeah.
do you do in that case? So the temperaments I love, and actually I'll bring up a study and put it in the show notes for those of you listening. I know sometimes they like some this to be backed by research. So the studies that I've read are around like the dandelion, the orchid
Yeah.
studies, right? Yeah. And for parents listening, the environment does matter. And so you mentioned that it is possible to put out an intervention and do something
Yeah.
and support the child, but I'm assuming it's not going to completely go away. I'm just thinking of my three kids. Like they each have their own temperament and we raise them in the same way,
Mhm.
but they all respond to the environment very differently. And even one child where I can tell you like I'm really I'm really upset that you said that, right? And one kid can say, "Okay, I'm sorry." The other kid will say, I know, I thought about it now. I won't do it again." And the other child would say, "Why do you hate me?" And so
Absolutely.
and that's where we see the difference in their temperament. So if a parent is noticing a more difficult temperament, especially in a child that is resistant to wanting to learn how to regulate or even talk about what happened, how do you manage that?
Yeah. So, when we spoke a little bit in advance of this, and I
Hmm.
was thinking about this kind of child, the kind that puts their fingers in their ears and it's like, I don't want to hear you. And
Yeah.
all you're doing is all the skills that we have basically told you to do in a therapeutic setting, right?
Mm-hmm.
Validate the emotions,
Yeah.
create space, let them feel their feelings, and all of those things. And then you're getting this enormous pushback, and you're like,
Mm-hmm.
well, I did all the things that you told me to do, psychologist or therapist or whatever. Like, why am I getting this reaction? And I have one of these kids too. And so it's very easy for me to put myself into these shoes.
Mm-hmm.
But there's sort of a couple different avenues I want to explore that I think are important to talk about. So I think when our child is seriously, significantly struggling with emotion dysregulation, like to the point where they are running and slamming doors, everything is aversive, all the
Mm-hmm.
sensory input is overwhelming. I think that first we want to make sure that we're not just looking at temperament, but we're also, my line of work is psychological evaluations. And so I
Mm-hmm.
do assessments to figure out if there's something above and beyond just challenging behavior, like a clinical diagnosis. And I think it's really important that we rule that out first off,
Sure.
before I even get into the intervention. I think millennials can really be credited with moving the dial in terms of the
Mm-hmm.
stigma associated with labels.
Mm-hmm.
And now we find so much community and support in obtaining an appropriate diagnosis. So I just want to put it out there as a very first initial step. Like if we're like, this is above and beyond what I think typical kids are doing right now in response, I think it might be important to first seek out a little bit more information.
Are
That's
there
first.
are there any signs for a parent to help? I know with mental health we often
Yeah.
talk about like functioning. If you're not functioning, if things are harder, then that's a sign. What would it be for a child?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the answer is that all the different, for example, neurodevelopmental disorders differences that we put under that umbrella have something in common, which is impairment in a setting, in school, at home. No matter what the symptoms are, the cluster of symptoms differ based on which diagnostic group we're looking at. Like ADHD, we're seeing like kids bouncing off the walls or kids zoning out. Or for autism, maybe difficulty with social skills and some repetitive behaviors. Or learning disabilities, we're just struggling with reading or writing, but everything else tends to be pretty copacetic. But all of these have this underpinning of impairment in a setting. And so that means that our skills have I suppose the demands have exceeded our ability to cope with whatever setting we are in. We can no longer cope with the demands of school. We can no longer cope with the demands at home, and parents don't have the tools to help regulate.
Okay, that's perfect.
So once you as a parent feel like you don't have the tools and your child also doesn't feel like they have the tools to cope in whatever setting, it's worth exploring and getting a little more information. That's really vague, and I understand that. But however you can conceptualize that for your home, whether it's like a screaming match that happens every day and you just don't know what else to do, or your child cannot sit still, your child really struggles with making friends, anything that you're just like out of tools. I think it's worth just exploring the question.
Yeah, I get that.
So I think it's just important to put that caveat out there before I sort of dig into more.
Yeah.
So then sort of like where do we go now? Either way, right? Especially with neurodevelopmental differences, but also with neurotypical kids too, with certain temperaments, we're getting shut down, right? By teaching skills. So we're trying to teach and we're getting shut down. We're trying to do all the things that, psychologists and therapists taught us, but we're having the conversations, we're opening the door for dialogue or whatever, but the door is shutting in our face. And so that is a good indication that we need to approach from the side door. The front door was way too close to home, right? It triggered an immediate shame response. Usually this kind of response is shame.
Interesting. Right.
Cloaked in anger. Right?
Right. Yeah.
And we need to proceed from a different avenue that doesn't trigger shame.
Got it. And it's not that for parents listening. So what you're saying, it makes sense with what I've heard in terms of the parents, asking me certain questions. But this shame, as a parent, you might say, but I've never said anything to make you feel shamed. I'm not, yet every time I say, let's talk about it, you say, why me? Why are you always yelling at me? Why do you always want to sit down and have a conversation with me? Not my brother, not my sister, whatever it is. How do you, I'm assuming there's going to be some internal dialogue or something that you might have to do for yourself if you need to address this, and you're seeing this shame cloaked in anger, like you said, like, because you're going to feel bad as a parent.
I mean, then you're going to start feeling shame.
Yeah,
then it's a nice big shame spiral. But, and that makes sense. It all makes sense. The thing is that with kids, and with us, honestly, as adults who haven't processed this and worked through this as children, because we've never been given the tools, and children, even though sometimes it seems like they absolutely do not, children want to be pro-social and they want to please. They want to work with us. By default, kids are cooperative. And so when they are being uncooperative, right, there's something getting in the way. That's not their natural state. There is something blocking. And shame tends to overwhelm. And shame happens because of this dissonance between, this is the expectation that I know my parent has of me, and this is my difficulty with impulse control. This is my difficulty with inhibition. This is my whatever getting in the way, and there's nothing I can do about it. And then they feel that dissonance, right? And that's overwhelming. And that creates a nervous system response in the shape of explosive behaviors or crying or yelling. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And for parents listening, I just want to say, like, if your 6-year-old is the child that we are describing today, they're not going to say what you just said. They're not going to explain, right? And even a 9-year-old. And so I think it's really up to us as parents to understand what you just said and to kind of let that sit a little bit. And so when we're showing up for a child, now we know this is what I've seen. I understand what Alex is talking about. I've been taking the front door approach. What's the side door? What does that look like or sound like?
Yeah, what does it look like in real life?
Yeah.
So It's a really good question. So let's dig into it a little
Yeah.
bit. I think that there are a variety of ways, and we can tailor this based on, what who the child is, and what they gravitate towards in terms of intervention. But these are my favorite at my house. So for these kinds of kids, this is not every kid. You might have a kid who responds very well to teaching, but we're not talking about your kid right now. We're talking about other kids, right, who really do not.
Right.
Let go of explicit teaching strategies. The like sitting down and working on this skill one-on-one. It is creating sort of a shame igloo
Sure.
that they're in, right? And they're just getting more and more frozen into it. So instead, like, how do we thaw that out? I don't know why I
Mm,
came up with that metaphor, but
that's
whatever.
good. Yeah.
Instead, let's try tactics like modeling
Mm,
or overhearing or storytelling that has nothing to
mm,
do with them. So modeling for the first one could be something like acting out in exasperation, a situation, and letting your child witness how you work through that. Like, oh my gosh, I am so frustrated that this car won't start.
mm,
Like, I need to get to work on time. I'm going to miss that meeting I prepared 3 days for. Oh my gosh. Okay, Alex, you've been
mm.
here before. Take a breath. What did you do last time? Okay, you called AAA in the States, or
Yeah.
you took an Uber. You got there. I'm annoyed, but I remember what I did and I have the tools to work through this, or something like that. Has nothing
Mm-hmm.
to do with them. You might not even be exasperated about the thing,
Mm-hmm.
but using those little moments of frustration to externalize
Yeah.
your inner dialogue so that they can think through, like, oh, this is how we problem solve,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
That initial skill is far more interesting to them than you telling them explicitly what to do, which might create an automatic barrier.
Yeah. And I love that because many parents often say, I don't want to express what I'm going through for my child. I don't want them to see like this wide range of emotions. I always want to be happy for my child. I always want to make sure that they see that everything is fine. I'm like, no, no, no. You can, as
No.
long as it's age appropriate, it's okay to say, to come home and say, I had this argument with a colleague and it's really like, it's on my mind. And just like talk about I went to speak to them after. I wanted to make sure that we were okay, whatever it is, but like laying out what emotional intelligence looks like and what the steps look like in certain parts. So now what you're talking about is just even with yourself, like I don't have that extra egg I thought I had for a cake, and now I'm really upset and I'm frustrated. It's okay to say these things.
Yes, and
Yeah.
we don't have to finish with, "See, like, that's how you handle this,"
Right. Don't.
or,
Yeah.
"Next time you could try," like, we don't need
Yeah.
any of
No.
that. This intervention in and of itself is enough, and, what I wanna say about what you just said, with being happy all the time,
Mm.
and being in a completely regulated state all the time is not only is it not, uh, realistic, but it's not beneficial either,
No.
because there is no extinguish button on these feelings when you get to adulthood. It's not like they
Yeah.
stop. You don't stop feeling frustration or anger or sadness. They will always happen. And there are many adults who mishandle those feelings, right? Who
Mm-hmm.
really struggle with when those feelings arise, and then they do all sorts of things, sometimes that we see in the news, or sometimes that you just, like, somebody flips you off when you're driving,
Mm-hmm.
or all of these things, right? No matter what the magnitude is. And so that's because we haven't explicitly taught these skills, and we think that these skills just happen. They don't. They need work. Right? And this is
Yeah.
how we approach it from the side door, is by showing that we too experience it's normal, right? It's not shameful, it's
Mm-mm.
normal. And here is a problem solving, a ladder that we can climb
Right.
to get to the end.
Right.
And so I think it's actually far more beneficial to be human, uh,
Yeah.
and to demonstrate all of the emotion. That does not mean be explosive and
No.
scream at people, right? We also need to model healthy coping skills. Like, you can show frustration, you can
Mm-hmm.
show anger, right? But keep it within like normal limits, so we're not traumatizing our kids.
Mm-hmm.
We're not like we're not like throwing things
No.
necessarily. Okay. Uh,
Well, then that would be a sign that we need to work on our emotion
exactly,
regulation skills.
exactly. It's a good
Yeah.
point. And I should say, like, I throw things. It happens, but when we're trying to explicitly teach a skill,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah. Yeah.
through a side doorway, best if we can keep ourselves regulated. So sometimes it's best,
Yeah.
and when I say regulated, I mean like within normal limits. Like, it's
Of
okay to
course.
show emotion. Like, we have to, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or else our kid is
Mm-hmm.
going to think that there's a problem with showing emotion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that
And
too.
right. And there's not. It's just showing emotion in a regulated, somewhat regulated state, right? So we're not flying
Mm,
off the handle, but we're still, you can still say, like, your boss has probably approached you and been like, I'm really frustrated with the way that meeting went, right? So they're expressing it, but they're not like throwing the phone at you.
yeah.
They're showing like a
Mm,
regulated response. And so we want to show our kids the same. Emotions are okay, and you can handle them in this way. Um, but again, it's not pinpointing them. Like, see, this is how you do it, because then you've just
yeah.
lost them.
So you mentioned modeling. What were, I forget, I'm sorry, the other two that we
Yeah,
can do.
sure. So overhearing is kind of like modeling, and honestly, it's a tactic that I borderline abuse in my house. But I will role play phone calls with someone. I have done this many times. I'll pull in my husband and act out an apology. I'll talk about a friend who really struggles with XYZ on the phone. I'll be like, oh, Cindy, uh, you know, it sounds like you really had a hard time at lunch at work because nobody wanted to sit with you and it felt really
Mhm.
lonely. Like, that stinks. Tell me more about that. And then like, da, 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 da. And like, huh, like, how did you handle that? And all I'm modeling here is the problem solving process.
Yeah.
That's it. I'm not solving an issue, right? I'm not figuring out like what to do. It's the basis,
Mm,
right, for the regulation. There's like a underlying layer
mm,
that we need to first build so that we can even get to the actual application of these things, and just working through how to solve a problem
got
is
it.
something that these kids might struggle with.
Mm, that is so good. And I think that even for them to hear this, it's going to be awkward maybe for the parent the first time, I'm assuming, but it's so important for them to hear that problem solving kind of layout. And that's a great way to do it.
Yeah,
Mm.
the one that I think really gets my kids is talking about myself when I messed up. They
Oh,
love
right.
that. They love to hear the
Yeah.
times that mom messed up, and
Yeah.
or when I did something that went awry. And again, there's no gotcha at the end, like, see what mom did, like,
Mm-mm.
or and you can do it, this or whatever. None of that. Just leaving it in all its glory for them to absorb. They love hearing about the times I messed up, or I got in trouble, or I did something wrong. Oh my God, it's the best, right? So any way that we can sort of tell a story at night, my kid always wants a story. I am the worst storyteller. I honestly, I struggle with Goldilocks. Like, I really do. And he's tired of that one anyway, because it's the only one I can do off the cuff. So instead, I've taken to like one of the times that mom messed up. And it's really funny because he just laughs and laughs. And sometimes I don't think it's really funny, but he does. So that works.
Works.
Just explaining a time that like, and sometimes I totally make up these stories. Hopefully he doesn't go back and hear this when he's an adult, but I do. I'll just make up stories about things that are relevant, like themes for
Yeah.
like camp.
Yeah.
A time I went to camp, and like right now we're in summer in the US. Everyone goes to summer camp, and my kids are no exception.
Mm.
And sometimes going to camp is really hard. And so I talk about a time that it was really hard when I happened to be 8 years old too.
Mm.
And, and I make it sort of relevant. And again, there's no like, got you. It's just
Right.
telling the story. And sometimes I'll even throw in how I worked through it a little bit. Like, I was at sleepaway camp, and that was really hard because I wasn't even home at night. I was
Mm.
there the whole time. And so I would write letters, and sometimes I'd have to find friends that would kind of hug me when I was crying because I was
Mm.
sad, and it was hard. But then the next day we had this beach day, and that was really cool. And I kind of forgot about being sad, and then I felt sad again, and it kind of went up and down. And that's pretty normal, but it just, it was hard, and there were hard moments. It's really a basic story.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, just normalizing that kind
Yeah.
of conversation. It might not be something that we naturally do, right? Talking about our emotions, our undulating emotion,
Exactly.
what we've done. So
Mm.
those are
And
some.
I think it also creates a moment of connection with your
Yeah,
child. Like,
yeah,
they're learning about you, even if it's not true, but
yeah,
they're just learning about you and maybe how they see or they perceive you. You're like, oh yeah, mom had like hard moments. Mom felt that way too, or dad felt that way too. They were afraid of camp and all that. And
yeah.
it kind of builds a connection and hopefully also a space for them to open up and say, okay, it's not just me. So I love the way that you're doing it. It's really fun. It's, and I think a parent might struggle at the beginning beginning to do this. But again, I love that now I have this visual of the side door, because if we tell a child, it's camp, it's okay. First of all,
Right.
we're not validating. There's
Right.
nothing to be afraid of. You'll be fine. First, we learned from Carolyn Fleck. We had her on the podcast she's the author of the book Validation. That's not going to work. You haven't even validated that they're afraid. And now what you've done, because I know of a parent specifically that wrote to me and said, I tried validating my 9-year-old's emotions, and that makes her even more upset. And
Wow.
so that's the front door. I see it now. And the side door is, I went through one of these things. I remember how afraid I was or how worried I was. You've just validated indirectly with that side door. I see it now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
to the validation point or piece,
Mm,
you know, I see this movement and I like it, and I think we could upgrade it in some ways. And
sure.
sometimes I think the pendulum may have swung a little far
Mm,
over, right?
yeah, I
So
get that.
my generation, millennials, were anecdotally or stereotypically raised by more authoritarian parents,
Mm-hmm.
right? Rewards and punishments, swats, you'll be sorry in my days,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
So we have course corrected to be more connected to our kids, which is wonderful in so many ways. But I do think that there's enormous pressure on parents today to be these external regulators for their
Sure.
children.
Yeah.
And we have to work through every feeling, and we have to validate every concern. And if we don't, we might ruin attachment. I'm
Yeah.
exaggerating the narrative,
Yeah.
maybe. But my
Mm,
point is, it's actually not great to live in that territory either. And we have to give ourselves some permission to back out of our kids' inner lives a bit.
yeah.
And so sometimes I'll give parents an intervention and they'll say, like, what, that's it? Or, but then what? So I'm definitely not saying don't validate feelings, but I'm saying that validating feelings is only 50% of the equation.
Yes. Got it.
Validation is helpful, but
Yeah.
without the second part, it's rarely effective. So what is the second part, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
reflecting back capability
Mm,
and giving them a chance to fail. So it looks like this. We have a fear of dogs, and there's a dog walking toward us. And sometimes to avoid or appease, we're just going to cross the road
mm-hmm.
and avoid the dog. But here, we're not going to cross the street to avoid the dog. You aren't going to leave your child there to flounder alone either. You're going to find the middle ground, which is, oh, yeah, like you're scared of a dog. We're going to walk past it. And I'll be beside you because you're a kid who can do hard things. Right. We're
Mm,
not going to avoid the things, and we're not just going to validate away. Oh, you're so scared. And
right.
so we're going to escape it.
Yeah.
We're not going to do that either. We're
Yeah.
going to do the hard thing together in a supported way, because that's how we build skills
Yeah.
ultimately, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of creating that anti fragile generation that we're looking
Yes.
for, right?
Yeah.
By facing these things with a supportive caregiver next to us who works on these things with us. So
Mm,
validation, yes, but not on its own. We need
yes.
more than that.
I'm so happy you said that. And it kind of shows us that it's the equation of this plus that, right? Like we
Yeah,
have to remember that second part that you said. And I see it that way also with parenting styles, that we kind of, that pendulum has swung. We think it's swung into the authoritative, but from what I see personally with parents, I think it's actually a little bit more permissive sometimes,
agreed.
and they don't realize,
Yeah, agreed.
because
Agreed.
we're trying to follow this new type of parenting. And like you said, many of us were raised in an authoritarian, home and family.
Yeah.
Both parents being authoritarian, or one being authoritarian and the other one just packing up and saying, I
Oh,
can't deal with this. Exactly. I can't look. And, that's the reality of it. And I think that now as parents, now that we have our own kids, it's like, I will never do that. Or some people say, I was raised that way, everything went well, I'm going to continue it, right? That's actually the truth. But most parents that I'm speaking with are saying, I never want to be that parent that I had. And what they're saying now is, from what I've heard, is every part of me wants to discipline harshly because my child is being rude to me and disrespectful. And I know that with me, it stopped it quickly. I wouldn't dare speak to my parent the way that my child is speaking to me. But here I am validating their emotion, which goes back to what you just said, validating that they're mad, but like they're hitting me at the same time. And here while they're hitting me, I'm validating. I'm like, I know you're mad. It's okay. And it's so hard. So I'm so happy you said that. It's a whole podcast on its own.
Absolutely. I hear
Yeah.
that all the time. It's like I'm in it. I
Yeah.
feel this and I want to be this way. I want to be
Yeah.
this, whatever we're calling it,
Yeah.
parenting.
Yeah.
I want to be that kind of parent, but my kid's not listening, or like nothing's
Mm,
changing, or the behavior is still there.
mm,
And of course, like we're always going to see the challenging behaviors because we're working with kids who have an underdeveloped prefrontal cortex, and it's just going
mhm,
to happen that way, right?
mhm,
The prefrontal cortex is responsible for things like impulse control, inhibition, um, emotion regulation.
mhm.
All of those parts are underdeveloped. So obviously, right? That's why when a 2-year-old like falls on the floor, they scream bloody murder because there's no inhibition going
Mhm.
on. But when we fall on the floor, we're just like, oh man, ouch, right?
Yeah.
So it's normal that they would
Yeah.
have these big behaviors. And it does not mean there's nothing we can do, right, about it. It doesn't mean we just have to let our kids' emotions infect the whole dining room table
Yes.
at dinner and let them throw
Right.
all the spaghetti all the time. There is a middle
Yeah.
ground,
Yeah.
right? You can be a warm, nurturing parent and have boundaries simultaneously. In
Yes.
fact, research shows that's sort of the best
Mhm.
middle ground, right?
Mhm.
For
Mhm.
mental health outcomes and virtually every outcome.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Literally. So okay. So now we've taken that back door. Was there another tip, or now? Sorry, we've taken the side door, and what I want to move forward to is actually that piece of discipline or acknowledging or whatever it might be when there is some aggressive behavior or some disrespect. Because now it's like, well, I'm taking the side door approach. It's going to take a while. It's not one time, by the way, for parents that are listening. Don't try this tomorrow and say it didn't work. It's going to take time. It's like going to the gym. You don't do one bicep curl and be like, wow, look at that growth. No, it's not there. It's going to take time. And so I want parents to remember that it's going to take time. Practice for yourself, for your child. You're going to be talking to yourself about your emotions out loud for a little while. And then maybe sometimes you'll notice a very small win, which is what I tell parents. Look for the small win because we miss it sometimes, right? We miss that our child always blocked their ears. They never wanted to listen. And for the first time today, we had them listen to us for 2 minutes. That's a small win. We might not see it because then they block their ears after. And you're like, here I am again in the same pattern, but you missed the 2-minute window of a small win. So what happens when we are starting the work of taking that side door, yet our child is not there yet? They are not showing up in the way we're hoping. They are maybe not even listening to our story, saying it's stupid, it's dumb, I don't want to hear it, blah, right? How do we address them behaving a certain way, especially if their temperament is the one of, why are you always against me? Why is the world against me? Everybody is right, because they might be getting in trouble at school. They might be struggling making friends because their friends say you're mean and you're mad, and I don't like that. How do we slowly scaffold that world into what we need it to be?
There's so much gold in what you just said, Cindy, especially the workout metaphor. Sometimes I'll use like the diet metaphor, which is for anyone who has ever tried to go on a diet and they adhere and then the scale like goes up 2 pounds, right?
You're
And
like,
they're
oh
like,
no, I messed
what
up.
the hell?
I'm
Like I did all
I,
the things. Like, why is it how could it not
yeah,
move? Or how could it
yeah,
go up? Right. And so that is normal. That is
yeah.
just a normal process. And sometimes it's part of the journey, right? We'll
Mm-hmm.
see like the 2 pound gain and a half pound loss and a 1 pound loss and a 2 pound gain, and it'll
Mm-hmm.
just go over and over. And it's the same with building a muscle. It's the same
Yeah.
idea. It's that um, we are making micro tears in the
Mm-hmm.
muscles, right? So that they end up being more effective later. It takes time, not even weeks, but months,
Mm-hmm.
years.
Mm-hmm.
And all of these interventions, fortunately, unfortunately, work the same in that they have to be consistently implemented, just like, we have to eat fiber and brush our teeth every day. It's not like once a week and we're good, right? These are patterns,
Consistency. Yeah.
right? Consistency. And that's the hardest part, I think, of any shift in our system, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
exercise or eating or parenting. It's the consistent skill building. And when we try these interventions 3 or 4 times and nothing has shifted, we throw in the towel and that's the end. And
Exactly.
this is the problem. It's that, honestly, and what I somewhat disappointingly tell parents is that all like evidence-based interventions are going to be like, and this is on average, more or less equally effective. What changes is the value system that we're implementing. Like, what is
Mm-hmm.
our goal with this? Like, is it to avoid like anxiety and mental health issues down the road, um, and to keep our attachment with our kids strong while
Mhm.
building skill, because that's going to be all the things we're talking about. Or is it going to be like, I don't really care about that other stuff, I just want to make sure that they're tough or whatever? Then we're going to use a
Yeah.
different, it comes down to our, and I'm not here to tell anyone that their value system is wrong. It's
Mm.
just that the families that work with me are, and you probably are going to have a certain value system. And so I'm
Yeah.
kind of speaking to those people, right? And everyone else who has a different value system, that's cool. Like there's nothing wrong with that. It's
Yeah.
just, this is the orientation that I've chosen, and
Yeah.
this is the orientation that you've chosen, Cindy. And we kind of work with a lot of different kinds of parents,
Mhm.
but ultimately, we're looking at the long game,
Yeah,
right? It's a really
exactly.
long game.
Yeah.
And so because of that, it is these micro interventions that are consistently implemented. So with that in mind,
Mhm.
and a lot of the interventions I realized that I gave to you kind of today off the cuff were for probably school aged kids. And so whether they're older or much, much younger, obviously we're going to have to tweak it. Oh,
Mhm.
there's lots to consider. Um, Prophylactically, there are some things we can consider, like the physical state of hunger or fatigue or thirst,
Mhm.
sensory needs. What can we do to buffer those states first, right? Does our child become more reactive when they are hangry or
Yeah,
when they
right.
have itchy pants on,
Right,
right?
yes. Yeah.
Um, did they get the opportunity to do in OT what we call heavy work that day,
Mhm.
right? So that's like engaging the muscles and joints through resistance, like pushing, pulling, lifting, carrying. Um, those kinds of activities in OT stimulate what's called the proprioceptive system, and that plays a really big role in regulating emotions and knowing where
Mm.
your body is in time. And so, like, were they moving, right? Were they
Right?
doing the things that kids should do, like jumping outside along logs or whatever? Are they
Right.
moving?
Mm.
So, prophylactically, what has happened? I think that's important to just keep in mind, right? If our child has woken up and watched 2 hours of cartoons, our expectation, where they haven't moved, there's nothing wrong. Like I do that on Saturdays too all the time. It's fine. But I'm saying, our expectation thereafter is that we're probably not going to have a super regulated kid who's willing to listen to all of our demands, right?
Right.
So we have
I
to
get that.
scaffold.
Yes.
Number two, in terms of discipline,
Mm.
and where we go from here, like I really get it. Our kid is laying into us, they are spouting out curse words. I work with, used to work in a massive children's hospital, and did some inpatient work there too, and so with a lot of teens. And so I know how overwhelming,
Mm.
especially when their bodies are bigger than yours,
Mm.
and scary it can be when a child is looking at you and ready to strike, right?
Mhm.
Or with words or whatever it
Yeah.
is, physically or otherwise. And so if you have one of those kids, right, there are varying levels of support that we need. But say it's like within the somewhat manageable type
Mm.
that doesn't need inpatient care. Okay. Um, there are a couple things. One tactic that I really like, actually, before I even get into tactics,
Yeah.
I think it's really important that we realize in the moment, when we're at it at 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10, 10 out of 10, there is no teaching going on,
Thank you for
right?
saying that. Yes. Yes. Let's
Right.
let's pause on that for 1 second.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, no teaching. No, I know. And it's
Yeah.
hard. Yeah.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
we're there's no skill building, right?
Mm-mm.
So we're surviving those
Yeah.
moments, right? So
Mm.
before we think about all of the smart things we can do to teach, like let that go. We're not going to teach now. We're going to teach when we're regulated, because that's when
Yeah.
all of us learn. When we're not hungry, when we're not thirsty, when we're not tired, like that's when we learn, and not just learn but retain
Right.
that information so we can
Mhm.
use it later, right? Otherwise, it's just in and out.
Yeah.
Okay, so first, nothing is being taught. We are surviving. But how do we survive and still feel somewhat in control of the situation? And maybe know that we have a boundary here.
Mhm.
So we have a very dysregulated teenager. They're screaming. It's not like we can pick them up and move them to another room like we would with a little kid, right? So there are a couple things we can do. Sometimes I will recommend using like nonverbals, like a hand up and being like, I don't know if anybody can see me. I have my hand in front of my
Sure.
face,
Your
like a
hands up.
stop
Yeah.
sign,
Mm.
and then I will say like, stop. You can state that differently, or, oh, I think that is not what you meant to say. You can have a redo.
Yeah.
So it's like neutral, right? But stating that like this is not how we speak in this house, and that you're giving them an opportunity to fix it. If we're not in a 10 out of 10, say like a 7 out of 10, they're like,
Yeah.
I hate you, you're the
Yeah.
worst mom ever, how could you not let me go? You can say, stop.
Even with a 5 or 6-year-old, you would use that physical barrier sort of, or the boundary?
Sometimes,
Yeah.
and it depends how spiraled out we are.
Sure.
Sometimes I would put the hand out and be like, "Ooh, you can try that again."
Okay.
Or
Yeah.
sometimes they will run themselves to the room, and sometimes they will
Mm-hmm.
keep spewing. So for a little kid, where the emotion is just sort of dysregulating the whole system, it is okay to pick them up and move them to somewhere else, like a smaller room or their bedroom or whatever. You can sit with them, you can hold
Mm-hmm.
them, you can sit by the door, you can sit outside the door, like anything to just sort of bring them back down to baseline. And just know that your job there is to contain emotions,
Yeah.
just keeping them within the boundaries, right? And that's it. That's all you need to do is just bring us back to baseline, because at baseline we can learn. You can talk about it later if you want, or you can use the side door approach at bedtime, right?
Right.
I remember when I was 6, oh my gosh, my mom got so mad at me.
Mm.
Wait, why? What happened? And then something like that. Then you can sort of tell a story about how you problem solve. Okay, but we're not teaching then. You're not telling a story then. No side approaches then. But a teenager, it's really hard to do that. And sometimes they are not interested in your childhood stories. They do
No.
not care. And so my favorite intervention for a teenager who is explosive is in a car, car ride, when they're no longer explosive. So you have brought it down to baseline. You've told them, like, this is my boundary. You can literally say that, or you can say, if you're going to talk to me that way, I'm going to go upstairs and take a break. And when you're ready to come talk to me in a more respectful way, then I'm here for the conversation, right? You can literally move yourself somewhere else and close the door, and give them an opportunity to fix it.
Sure. I like that. Right.
I love the car ride because no one's making eye contact,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
The stakes are low. You can try side door approaches with teens. Sometimes if you're like, that was really hard, I wonder what I can do next time to sort of help you. It will open the door. Just like, I wonder, like Socratic.
I like that. I like it so much. I just have to go back to that example of I hate you, because I know so many parents have experienced it, maybe even just one time, or maybe you're stuck in this cycle that we're talking about today. Because what you explained is it requires me to be regulated in that moment, right? Sort of.
Yes.
To be able to be like, ooh,
Yes.
okay, I don't think that's what you meant, right? Like, I hate you. I'm thinking of the stories I've heard, and the reaction could be, how dare you say that, right? Like, go to your room. No screen time today. Give me your iPad, right? Like, we go, and then the next day it happens again, right? It's like, I hate you again. How dare you? I told you. Now there's no iPad all week.
Right.
And then, or I've heard the opposite, where it's like, I hate you. Really? Do you really hate me? Or do you is that like a real thing? Like, what can I do to make you love me? Like, I want you to love me. I've heard both. And so can we address these situations where we as the parent are not there yet? Maybe we have the building steps or the blocks, because I've heard it once in my life, and it was like, oh, it was like that hurt, took the breath out of my whole body. It was like, oh, and then it's like, okay, I had to be regulated to say, that's not what my child meant. Okay, listen, and we, like you said, not teaching. I'm going to give you a moment. What you said is not right, but let's talk about it after. And he was 4, and the next day he was like, I'll never say it again. I'm so sorry. But just to say, it came out as a reaction, right? As a moment of like, oh, I'm so mad at you. So how do we regulate ourselves and support ourselves in that moment where hearing I hate you, or like, you're the worst mom ever, or the worst dad ever, my friends' parents are better than yours, whatever it is in that moment, those are hard for parents. So how do we show up for ourselves in that moment?
I think 4 is like a magic age. I think that's when I first heard I hate you too, Cindy, for what it's worth.
Hard. Yeah.
And it really stings.
Yeah.
Especially because what I want to say is, do you know how good you have it?
Yeah. Or that's another response. Yes.
Do you know how lucky you are?
Yes.
That's what I want to say. As it flipped out, I think it has maybe once or twice. Yeah, I think so.
It's
obviously,
hard.
It's not what I'm going to recommend, but has it slipped out of my mouth, even with all of my tools? Absolutely.
Of course. End of day, we're tired, we're hungry, right? Exactly.
needs met,
Yeah.
right?
Same. Yeah.
And it's so something to, yeah, like what is our baseline? I think one of the hardest things that no one tells you about parenting, I'm convinced of it, is regulating our own nervous system in the face of our child's dysregulation, right?
Hmm.
So many of us, myself included, get absorbed in their tornado of
Hmm.
emotions. Usually because we are empathetic people who care deeply about our kids' feelings,
Hmm.
or also because we're sensitive to the sensory environment, right? Like the
Yeah.
noises, the touching, all the
Oh,
things,
yes.
or like a combination, right, of
Yeah.
all those things. And I used to do one-on-one therapy with kids, and I always found it wildly dissatisfying sending their kids back to their environment the other 23 hours of
Hmm.
their day without working on tools with the parents,
Exactly.
because ultimately nothing will change if we don't change. It
Hmm.
all has to start with us.
Hmm.
And there are a million reasons why we don't, right? We don't have time. We are drained. We
Hmm.
don't have community. We don't know where to start. And one of the beauties of what you are offering, Cindy, is
Hmm.
that it kind of fills a lot of those gaps, right?
That's my own
Um,
dream for parents, right? Like
yeah,
even the moment that we find out we're expecting, I remember the prenatal class I took here in Montreal. It's like how to hold a baby, nurse the baby, how to change a diaper. Thank you. You're good to go. You're going to be the best parent ever. And then I'm
and you
like,
really did
okay. And then I
great.
have this child and they're crying for hours and hours on end. And now I learned that I get dysregulated by sound. Didn't know that. Been to concerts. It was fine. I
Yeah,
loved it. Came home happy. But now like I'm starting to have like visions of like this can't continue. And they're like, and then by the time I had my second and third, I learned that I get dysregulated by touch. You said touch. I felt it in my body. I couldn't. I had three kids in under 4 years. There was always somebody on my skin, and then
right.
my husband would come home and give me a big hug, and I'm like, ugh, get off.
Yes. Or if you're
Yeah.
nursing literally
Oh,
attached to you for years, it's
yeah.
so much. It's like
Yeah.
intensive.
Which
Right?
is why, yeah, and which
Yeah,
is why I think that parental like parent education shouldn't be just about like what to say to your child, which is part of it, but we have to learn ourselves and our nervous system, because it doesn't matter if we've read all the books and we know how to show up for a tantrum. You don't know how you're going to show up for the tantrum. It doesn't say that in enough in everything that we learn about parenting, which is so, thank you for saying that, because that's my own dream for parents.
yeah. And
Yeah.
our emotional state is going to have ripple effects on our child's response.
Mm-hmm.
And when I started working with parents instead of kids, I found therapy so much more enjoyable
Mm,
because that's where real change happens. It's with us, right? It's
yeah.
being intentional.
Yeah.
And so that's what you're offering. And I just think that that's really cool.
Thank you. So going back to that parent who didn't learn this, who hasn't learned it yet.
Yes.
Now we've listened to your steps, but we just have to touch on the parent for a bit, because now hearing "I hate you, you're the worst parent," that's going to throw us into a direction that maybe we haven't been there yet. And so, how do we show up for ourselves in that moment where it hurts so much to hear a child say that, especially if it's on repeat? If you're stuck in this cycle and every day, because you give your child a glass of milk in the red cup, or you say it's bedtime, all of a sudden you're the worst parent and you're stuck in that cycle, and it's not even about showing up using the side door for your child at that point. It starts with you, and so you have to learn to first stay regulated, because you're snapping and reacting, or feeling so bad that you try to make your child so happy, right? And
Yes.
you want to yell, but you're like, extra smile now, it's okay, you just said I hate you, I'm fine with that, let's go to bed and have a good evening, right? It's so hard. So how do you
Oh,
show up for yourself?
so hard. And
Yeah.
this has been a work in progress for me because again, like no one teaches you this stuff, right? Even if you take a course, it's on the diapers, not the emotions.
Yeah.
And you don't know it until you're in it. And there's I don't it's very little work you can do in advance for this. I think it's really when you're thrown in.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, you have to
you,
be.
you just you have to experience it. And a couple of things, for little kids, when they throw the I hate yous or you're the worst parent, like they don't even know what that means. Like they don't even know the word hate
Thank you.
or love. I remember my 4-year-old
Mm,
asking me, I said, I love you. He's like, what does love mean? Like he has no clue, right? He just knows that like hate gives me this reaction and love gives me
mm,
this reaction. And like eventually we're going to learn, okay, it is just an emotional output that came out of their mouths instead of their hands or feet, right? Instead of hitting or kicking, it just came out of their mouth, right?
Mm.
It's like when you have a stomach bug, or it can come out of either way. Like it just
Yeah.
came out that way. It came out for
That's
them
such a good.
just in like a
Yeah.
verbal attack.
Yeah.
Okay. And so what I have learned in those moments, and whether it's verbal or physical,
Mm.
either way, my boundary is in my house. No one hurts me, and so I block it,
Sure.
and with my body. So I'll literally block it, and I'll say, you can try again, or I'll say like, this is too much, I need a break, you can come back to me when you're calm. And for the other things like the red cup, and like they throw it because it had, it was red and they wanted blue,
Yeah.
or whatever, those moments, what I'll say is, and this was hard, this took me a long time to get here, okay, but now when I see it, I'll be like, oh, yeah, you threw the cup, like if you want another cup, you can go get it yourself, and then first you have to clean up your mess.
Yeah.
And sometimes they'll say, no, I'm not cleaning
Hmm.
up my mess. And then I'll be like, okay, do you want to do it now, or do you want to do it in 10 minutes? And then I'll set a
Hmm.
timer for 10 minutes, because it gives them a sense of autonomy
Yeah.
in there. If they throw juice on the floor, something like that, intentionally to piss me off, in what I'm going to do is I'm going to implement the boundary that they have to help clean it up, something like that. Like that's my boundary. And that's enough. That's like enough of teaching. But we can do it together, or we can do it in 10 minutes or whatever, giving them a sense of autonomy. The reason I do that second piece is to bring the nervous system back down to baseline, because they're not doing it just to piss you off. They're
Yeah.
doing it because they are baseline dysregulated for
Yeah.
some reason, whatever it is. They slept on the wrong side of the bed. I don't know, whatever
Hmm.
it is. They're just not right.
Mm.
And so instead of being like, this is an affront against me, you're being so disrespectful, I'm shifting my mindset. And like I said, this took me a while, to instead of this is an attack on me, is that they are in a state of dysregulation. And
Mm.
so we need to go back to baseline. I'm going to hold my boundary. I'm not going to be like, this is all okay, you can throw your cups, go crazy. No,
Yeah.
no, no. I'm going to say like, oh, you did that. In this house, we don't do that, but you can help me clean up. Or you
Yeah.
can clean up in a little while.
Mm.
Or something like that. I'm
Sure.
stating my boundary. We can do it together. Nervous system comes back down,
Mm.
and then they've learned a tool. Like, oh,
Yeah.
okay. I
And
don't. Yeah,
and
sorry.
your nervous system comes down in that moment, right? Because rather than letting yourself react to that, and that mindset shift that you mentioned is so important, right? They're not doing this to me, right? Even if
Yes,
they're yelling, but it's so hard to see it that way.
it's
It's so
so
hard to
hard.
see it that way in that moment.
Oh
Because
my
like,
god.
yeah, you're trying to piss me off. You are trying to do this on purpose. You said you hate me. Like you're
Yes,
doing this to me. You are
yes,
trying to hurt me. But they
yes.
don't see, like you said, I'm so happy you said that. They don't realize what they're saying. Like they are
No.
just trying, they are they trying to trigger, not trigger, but like push buttons? It's like, I mean, I do it with my husband.
Yeah.
Like, so do kids know how to do that? Is that correct? Or,
Kids
yeah.
know how to push buttons, but I would say that the default isn't doing it just to do it. Like when you do it to your husband, it's probably because you're feeling, and I know this from personal experience, resentment, right? Or
Yeah. Yeah.
frustration.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not because you just want to, because you're manipulative by
Yeah.
default. It's because you're feeling something underneath it, right?
Yes,
You're
exactly.
annoyed about something. You're not
Mm-hmm.
just doing it to do it. And so it's that, again, like in those moments, there have definitely been moments where I'm just like letting it fly, and like I am not saying we're going to do this together. I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely. But even like
Yeah.
20% of the time, if we can try the regulated response,
Yeah.
that's good enough. It's okay. And
Mm-hmm.
so shifting like how I would do this with an adult and how I would do this with a kid are very similar. We just extend so much more compassion to adults for some reason.
I know. It's true.
We
Yeah.
give them the benefit
There's a
of the
truth.
doubt. We're kind with them. We use nice words. And then, I mean, sometimes we explode, but it's very rare that our first reaction would be like, what the hell, to
Mm-hmm.
your husband? It would be
Yeah.
like stewing or something
Yeah.
else, right?
It's true.
So,
Mm.
you know, kids are just an easy target for our anger, right? Because they want to please us so much. And we know, because we're good parents, that they're always going to want to come back to us. And so it can be really hard for us to default to something. And we know that deep down, like sometimes it's hard to access that. Um, but ultimately, I think that shift in mindset from they are doing this to me to they are expressing their discontent,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just in my vicinity,
Mm-hmm.
or because I'm a safe person. In fact, I'm probably the safest person to whom to express, these
That's another thing. Right.
right these
Yeah.
feelings, right? And so you're kind of a victim of your own success in that way.
That's so
I
good.
always say congratulations when
Yeah.
a parent's done. I'm like, oh, good, you're safe. Yeah, that's
I love that. I'm having so much trouble having to end like ending this podcast because I'm enjoying everything. I'm learning. Taking it all in. I'm taking notes. Alex, I can't thank you enough. I realized that I usually I open up the intro on my own, but we didn't take a moment to share who you are. I mean, I did in the intro, but just to say, um, now that we're ending this conversation, how can somebody learn more from you? Find you online? You have your own practice. Share anything that could allow us to keep learning from you, because what you shared today was just amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, cool. Well, I'm Alex Reed. I'm a pediatric clinical psychologist. I'm now based out of Philadelphia and with my own private practice. I do mostly evaluations and like psychological evaluations for kids with neurodevelopmental differences or disorders. I recently left my position at Nationwide Children's Hospital and as an assistant professor at OSU to start my own practice in my hometown. And I'm a mom of two, and I have a handle on Instagram, Dr. Alex Reed, and my website for my practice, which is called Acorn Child Development and Evaluation.
I will share all of that in the show notes. I have a feeling this is just the first of many. Thank you for joining me, and I look forward to our next conversation.